All right, so welcome back to our series here on the cardiovascular system. We're on to part 2, the heart. So we'll be getting into some anatomy about the heart. So let's get started. First, well, what is the heart? It's a muscular pump that's pushing blood throughout your body. And as we talked about last time, the main function of the cardiovascular system is to deliver nutrients and pick up waste from your cells all across your body. You may be familiar with the 4 chambers of the human heart. So we have 2 atria. We have the right atrium, the left atrium, and the lower 2 chambers are called ventricles. So we have the right and the left ventricle.
Well, someone out there might be wondering, this is
Yeah.
in that diagram on the last slide, you said the right atrium and left atrium, but the right atrium's on the left and the left one's on the right. Did somebody make a mistake there on the labels, or?
Yeah, maybe they didn't know like the little tip to help you figure out left and right. Maybe.
Right.
You got to imagine, Mr. Kemmer, that this is your heart. Okay, I know you don't probably have one of those, so it's going to take a lot of imagination. Imagine you have a heart. And if you think about your heart inside your chest there, it's going to be from the perspective of the person, that it would be your right side and your left side.
Got it.
Okay, so we got those 4 chambers, and what you'll see a lot is some color coding throughout the slides and everything we've got today. So the atria here are the receiving chambers of the heart, and so blood is entering in through your the right atria, and the right atria from the cells of your body through the vena cava. So this is blood that has gone to your cells. It's coming back now, so it is low in oxygen, or we say deoxygenated. The flip side then, blood entering through the left atria is coming from the lungs through your pulmonary veins. Since it's coming from the lungs, it's picked up that oxygen that you're breathing in. So we say it's got lots of oxygen, or it's oxygenated.
And to Ms. Ripley's comment there about the color coding, we don't want to perpetuate a myth that is sometimes students have, or a misconception students have out there, that blood is blue when it's in your veins. Your blood is never blue. If you look at your veins through your skin, sometimes it might appear blue, but that's just kind of a trick of which wavelengths of light get absorbed by your skin and reflected by the vein. It's not blue. Your blood's never blue. It's red, always red. It can be different shades of red based on how much oxygen it has or doesn't have in it, but it is red due to the hemoglobin that's in there and iron that hemoglobin has. So we do, and you will see in this presentation and many other diagrams for the circulatory system, red is often just a convention for representing oxygenated blood. Blue represents that deoxygenated blood. So yes, you'll see those 2 colors, but no, it is not an actual representation of the color of your blood. Myth busted. Excellent. Made me happier than it should have. All right. The other 2 chambers of the heart. So Ms. Ripley was talking about the atria, and those 2 are on the top of the heart, and then below those, on the bottom of the heart, are the other 2 chambers, the ventricles. Just like with the atria, there's a left and a right, and the ventricles are really the pumping force inside the heart. So the right ventricle is going to pump blood. Maybe back up just a little bit here. The blood from the right atrium goes through a valve into the right ventricle. And then from there, the right ventricle squeezes, it contracts, and that forces the blood out of the heart through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. So right ventricle pumps blood to the lungs to get oxygen, drop off carbon dioxide. And then the left ventricle is going to be pumping the oxygenated blood, oxygen-rich blood, out of the heart through the aorta and out to the rest of the body where it will be delivered.
All right. So, and that kind of brings us to the kind of looking at the whole system of this blood flow, putting all this together, what's happening in these chambers and the major blood vessels. So we can see here on this diagram, the right side, which is the side of the heart that is blue, okay, pumps blood to the lungs. So we got deoxygenated blood on the right side. It's going to pump it up to the lungs here, go through the capillaries in the lungs, which are really small arteries or vessels we'll get to in the next unit or next section. It's going to drop off the excess carbon dioxide, which you'll breathe out, and pick up oxygen. And so then it leaves the lungs, it'll come back to the heart, oxygenated to the left atrium. That circuit from the heart through the lungs and then back to the heart, we call the pulmonary circuit. It's one circle, heart to the lungs and back, and that picks up oxygen. Okay. Then now we've got oxygenated blood in the left atria here. That will flow down into the left ventricle, which is actually a little bit more muscular than the right. You can see that in the picture. It's thicker muscle wall there. And then that big muscular side is going to pump it out through the aorta, the oxygen-rich blood through the aorta, down through all the arteries, and into all the tissues of your body that need oxygen. And those tissues, the oxygen will leave the blood, get to the tissues, and your blood will pick up that carbon dioxide that's in the tissues. So now you've got that deoxygenated blood coming back. It's showing as blue, back into the heart through the vena cavas, into the right atria. And that circuit from the heart, from the left ventricle, down through the body, and then back to the heart is called the systemic circuit, because feeding all your various systems with oxygenated blood. And you put those two together, it's kind of like a figure 8. The blood goes from the heart to the lungs, back to the heart, from the heart down to the body, and back to the heart. Then you got to send it back up to pick up some oxygen, back to the heart, then send it down to drop off that oxygen, pick up carbon dioxide, back to the heart. And just keep on doing that. You're making those two circuits over and over again. Let's skip that one. Now, inside the heart, guys, all right, we want to make sure that the blood is only moving in one direction. Like we said, it's a circuit. It's not kind of going. Each of these things down here has 2 holes, right? There's a hole where the blood's coming into the atria, and there's a hole where it leaves the atria and goes down into the ventricle down here. One way to remember this is a ventricle, see how it's V-shaped? That's how I remember this is a ventricle. And then the ones on top, A's above, they're on top. And there's this valve here. You can kind of think about it. If you had you want the blood to flow one direction, right? You don't want to go backwards. That'd be inefficient. So we've got these valves. Every time a muscle squeezes in the heart, there's only one way that blood can flow, and that is through that valve, because we have valves that keep it from going backwards. So blood can push this valve open. Okay, if this is kind of like the shape of that valve, I should do it like this. Blood comes down, and it can push that valve open and go down into the ventricle. Okay. Now, when the ventricle squeezes down here, that squeezes, and that's going to try to push blood back up. Now, blood pushing back up is going to kind of push these valves together. They're going to slap together, and they are going to hold shut and make sure the blood doesn't go backwards here, and it goes out to where it needs to go, in this case, through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. And there's another valve there to make sure it doesn't come back. So we got 4 valves in the heart, and their job is just to make sure the blood goes in one direction only. Interesting thing is the closing of those valves when they slap together, that's what makes the sound that we hear with the stethoscope, that lub-dub, 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 lub-dub sound is the result of those valves slapping together. But we get it kind of muffled because it's coming through our body. It's not that nice, like you're clapping for your favorite band or anything like that. So let's summarize this blood flow through here.
The normal heart has 2 sides, a right side and a left side, and 4 chambers, the top receiving chambers, or atrium, and the lower chambers, which are thick-walled pumping chambers, called ventricles. Red blood cell will come from either the superior vena cava or the inferior vena cava and enter into the right atrium. The blood then flows across the tricuspid valve to the right ventricle. The right ventricle then squeezes and ejects that blood cell into a vessel called the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery splits into 2 vessels, each going to the lungs. As that red blood cell makes its way through the lung, it returns through the pulmonary veins to the left atrium. That blood is now oxygenated. It's picked up oxygen, then goes across the mitral valve into the left ventricle, which does most of the work in terms of delivery of blood flow to the body. That blood cell is now ejected into the aorta to some organ or muscle or skin in the human body.
And that is the basics, how blood circulates through our body and our heart. And I believe, yeah.
Oh, I was going to add on a couple of things. One was to note that we're not expecting students to know the names of the valves.
Oh, true.
So yeah, if they're not, just don't be concerned about that, but know that they're there and why they're there. And the other thing too, with the contraction of the atria, the left and right atria, and the ventricles, it's not like a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of pattern. The two atria contract, which fills the two ventricles, and then the two ventricles contract, which pushes the blood out. So just so we didn't introduce an idea that it's kind of like a pump, kind of.
Good point, Mr. Commenter. Well done. And that will do it for our section on the heart and its parts and how the blood flows through it. In the next section, you come back and join us, and we'll talk about the blood vessels that blood is moving through. See you next time.